Those are Froot Loops.
Froot Loops.
My favorite. I've been a believer since I made Close Encounters 50 years ago.
You already know where this is going. You felt it the second you saw the headline. Steven Spielberg, the man who gave us E.T., who made us believe in wonder. Now he's standing in front of cameras talking about Froot Loops. And just like I know, that wasn't an accident. Not an accident at all. Here's the thing though. When you watch that interview, the one from 2024, you see something shift behind his eyes. He's not promoting a movie the way they usually do. He's not selling you a product. He's doing something else entirely. He's confessing. And the proof is right there in the first 30 seconds. Let me take you back. They sat him down, the corporate media puppets, thinking they were getting the usual friendly chat about his new film, Disclosure Day. But Spielberg had other plans, he said. Actually, let me rephrase that. He didn't just say something unusual. He said something forbidden. He said, I've been a believer since I made Close Encounters 50 years ago, but I wouldn't call that science fiction. I call it science speculation. Stop right there. Think about that word. It's not imagination, not fantasy. Speculation means he's talking about something real, something he's been tracking for half a century. And the corporate interviewers, they got nervous. You could feel it. They tried to pivot, to change the subject to Westerns, to Harrison Ford on a horse. But Spielberg wasn't having it. He brought up the 2017 New York Times story, the one where whistleblowers gave them the tic-tac footage from Navy pilots. Footage of objects moving against 120-mile-per-hour headwinds, doing things no human aircraft can do. And Spielberg said that's when everything changed for him. That's when the circumstantial evidence became overwhelming. Now here's where it gets interesting. And I need you to stay with me here because this is the part they don't want you to connect. Spielberg name dropped Roswell 1947. He mentioned Betty and Barney Hill from the 1950s. He brought up Pascagoula. And then he said the words that should make your blood run cold. He talked about the aerial school incident in Zimbabwe. The one where 62 children saw a craft land, where beings came out, where Yale professor John Mack, a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, spent months interviewing those kids and came away convinced they were telling the truth. You know what happened to John Mack, don't you? Of course you do. They tried to destroy him. Harvard opened a formal investigation into his research, not because his methods were flawed, because his conclusions were dangerous, because he was telling the truth about something the elite have spent decades burying. And Spielberg knows this. He knows it intimately. This is the moment I want you to really hear me. I'm going to slow down for a second because this matters more than the usual Hollywood gossip. More than celebrity scandals or royal family drama, Steven Spielberg is not a whistleblower. He's a storyteller. But in 2024, standing in front of those cameras, he did something whistleblowers do. He risked everything, his reputation, his legacy, his place in the industry that made him. And why? Because he said Congress is holding hearings. Because he named David Grush. Because he said whistleblowers are risking their lives, not their careers, their lives. Think about that word. Lives, plural. How many people have to disappear before we stop pretending this is just a game? The interviewers tried to pull him back. They asked about empathy, about American flags, about streaming platforms. But Spielberg kept circling back to the same thing, the cover-up, the decades of silence, the way the government and the media have worked together to make anyone who sees the truth look crazy. And this is the part nobody talks about. Spielberg said he refused to call Close Encounters science fiction even back in 1977. He called it science speculation then too, which means he's known something for 50 years, and he's been waiting for the moment when the rest of us would be ready to hear it. You know what changed? 2017. That's when the New York Times, of all outlets, finally ran the story. When the videos came out, when the Pentagon admitted they had no explanation, when the gatekeepers couldn't keep the lid on anymore. And now here's Spielberg at 80 years old, making a movie called Disclosure Day, about what happens when the truth finally comes out, about what happens to faith, to family, to everything we thought we knew. He's not making a Western, though he wants to. He's not making another Indiana Jones. He's making the most dangerous film of his career. But here's the question they don't want you to ask, the one that should keep you up tonight. Why now? Why is Spielberg breaking silence after 50 years? Why is Congress suddenly holding hearings? Why are Navy pilots coming forward? Why are whistleblowers risking their lives? And the reason for that? Well, you'll see. Because here's what I believe. I believe they're losing control. The institutions that have kept us scared and confused and divided, the corporate media, the intelligence agencies, the Hollywood PR machine, they're cracking. And people like Spielberg, people who've been sitting on the truth for decades, they're finally deciding that the risk of speaking is smaller than the cost of staying silent. But you and I both know the cost of speaking can be everything. Look at what happened to every whistleblower before Grush. Look at how they were smeared, blackballed, silenced. Spielberg knows it too. And he still stood there and said whistleblowers are risking their lives. That's not a movie promotion. That's a warning. The interview ended with soft questions. About therapy, about his family, about John Ford's Horizon story. Normal stuff. Safe stuff. But the damage was already done. Spielberg had already said what he came to say. And the corporate media, they clipped it. They buried it under headlines about Froot Loops and Westerns. They tried to make you think it was just an old filmmaker rambling, but you're smarter than that. You saw it. You felt it. The same way you've felt it every time someone in power told you to look away. So here's my question to you, and I want you to really think about this before you answer in the comments. If Steven Spielberg, one of the most powerful directors in Hollywood history, is afraid to say this stuff openly without couching it in movie talk and Froot Loops metaphors, what does that tell you about what's really happening? And what does it tell you about what they're still hiding? Because this wasn't a slip-up. Not a slip-up at all. This was a man looking directly at the camera and telling you the truth in the only way he still can. The question is whether you're really listening.